Labour has confirmed plans to block all new development of oil and gas drilling in the North Sea if they're elected. That's exactly what Just Stop Oil are asking for. So, if Labour form the next government, the party has said it will also limit borrowing to green investment only. So Sir Keir Starmer is expected to make the announcement when he visits Scotland next month as part of his latest national mission. Now, I can't get my head around this one, Joe. Has Labour decided on this policy because they want to appeal to the eco-lobby and those concerned by environmental issues and climate change, or has it got something to do with the SNP?
Well, that's very cynical, Emily, but I think you're probably right on the last bit. Yes, interesting that he's going to make these remarks in Scotland next month, where the SNP have, always said they want to see a stop, but fallen slightly short of being as strong as Starmer is allegedly going to be. Yes, the SNP is imploding since Nicola Sturgeon stood down, and those votes are up for grabs for Labour, I would have thought. So I think that is part of the thinking behind it. I mean, I think it's very bold. I think it's going to be an extremely hard sell, not just to the general public, but within the Labour Party. Already the GMB union have come out and said, we're not so sure about this. But I think, you are either going to commit to green energy and an end to fossil fuel exploitation, or you're going to continue kicking it into the long grass again and again and again until we've run out of natural resources and we're not doing anything. But, there are two big issues here. One is people will go, oh, well, then we're going to be reliant on Putin or whoever it is for gas and oil. Until we can get our own wind turbines. Which
is a pretty good point, I must say.
And the other question is, do you want to say, having been, Rachel Reeves is making a very good fist of being Shadow Chancellor and is, giving Gordon Brown a run for his money on prudence, but, are you actually going to say, yes, we're going to borrow for investment? Fine, if it's green investment, but it's got to be hypothecated, it's got to be ring-fenced, because otherwise they're breaking their own rules.
Yes, that's a very good point. I mean, Connor, to me, this is madness. As Joe pointed out there, one of the key arguments against this is that, well, OK, we don't drill for oil and gas in this country anymore. So what do? We're going to be reliant on oil and gas in one way or another for the next couple of decades at least. So where are we going to get that oil and gas from?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I mean, my background was in energy policy, and so I wrote a paper in 2021 forecasting what would happen if, funnily enough, there was problems with Russia, which there usually have been throughout history. Then we're kind of up creek without a paddle there, because one of our leading suppliers, well, Norway, obviously, who can actually tap the North Sea, so we just let them do that, whereas if we tapped about 10% of it, we'd have enough energy for the country for 50 years, so that would seem like a really sensible plan, but we decided not to do that. We also had imports from Qatar, and we had all of those problems, human rights-wise, recently with the World Cup, and we were importing from Russia. And then we can see with the Russians, a great example, what happens if you are an energy-independent country that then sabotages your own energy independence with America. So under Donald Trump, he decided to make America an energy-independent nation through fracking for the first time that President Nixon in the 60s had set the mandate. And he achieved it. He made America a net exporter. When the Saudis and the Russians tried holding them ransom with OPEC over the price of oil, Trump was actually at the negotiating table and badgered them down, and so it meant America had more standing in the global stage. And then during that time as well, he oversaw America being the leading nation in the world, reducing emissions from 2017 to 2019. So it flew against all of the climate lobby's conventional wisdom. As soon as Biden gets in, on day one, he cancels his Keystone XL. Later on, by fiat, he makes it so that there are no federal gas leases no gas leases on federal land. He extends it indefinitely. And so, because America's reduced its gas production, they start increasing imports from Russia, almost like clockwork.
Well, this is the thing. I do worry about our politicians virtue signalling on the domestic stage, using this to talk big at things like COP26 on the international stage. And meanwhile, we're having to import things from dodgy, nefarious regimes.
Well,
Joe. It's all, you see,
again, this goes back to long-term strategy. Connor mentioned Norway. I mean, Norway had a long-term strategy for its wealth from oil. It's, put all of that investment, ring-fenced it, used it to create a very successful, prosperous country with fantastic, social facilities, social services, education, and all the rest of it. We've had 13 years of this government, but we've been talking about energy problems for 40, 50 years. We've had, I've been to umpteen conferences with, big oil producers where they were talking about peak oil, and we're pretty much reaching that point, and the need to invest in
I don't know. I think there's
I
quite a lot
don't think
left
so.
to be drilled.
Well,
because
you
I
might
know
do,
people
but
who
that-
work off in Scotland in the industry, off on the rigs, and they're not going to stop drilling if this happens and if the windfall taxes, stop them investing in our
No, they're
country.
just going to
they're
stop
just going to
new
go
fields.
elsewhere. No, but they'll just take their drills and go elsewhere. We're not going to stop climate change in this way. It's just virtue
Well, how
signalling
are we going to?
for our
How
politicians.
are we going to stop climate change?
Well, everything is moving in that direction. The market is providing solutions. I don't think governments know which ones are going to win out. So electric vehicles sounds great, but maybe we won't be driving electric vehicles in 20 years' time. We might be driving something completely different.
But that comes back to infrastructure and long-term planning. Are we building houses? Have we been building houses for the last 20, 30 years that are much more ecologically friendly, much more environmentally sound? No, we haven't. We're still dependent on boilers.
Long-term planning, Joe, that's a pipe dream.
Well, I know, but it's the only way you get anything done properly.
Les sounds like a realist. He says, we will depend on further imports for decades to come, whilst other countries of the world invest heavily in oil and gas. We will pay dearly for their foolish proposal. That's it. We'll lose out on all the tax money that comes from it. We'll lose out on all the jobs that come from it. Scotland's economy will be hit very, very hard indeed. Many people will lose their jobs, and we'll end up importing oil and gas anyway from halfway around the world, where it's probably more dirty. Yeah, but we should do that at the same time. I'm not against
But you see,
wind farms
all the
per
time,
se.
but all the time you've got the option. You're never going to make the tough decision. Say, right, we are really going to put our efforts into onshore, offshore
If
wind.
I can chime in on the Scottish
Very
point,
quickly.
because I actually went to Whitley Wind Farm. I asked them about this, and they said, we import them from Spain, we bring them over by shipping container, they don't make back the energy they needed, and so we actually need nuclear or gas to support it. So even the wind farm manufacturers don't want 100% renewable.
Well, there we go.
I can trump that with other wind farms that I've visited, but so, we can always...
Let's see what people at home think about wind farms. Are they fantastic, ingenious piece of technology, or are they...
They don't bloody work.
Or do they not work, as Connor says? Anyway.